Good morning, good day, and good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all races, ages, genders, sexual orientations, religions, etc. I have a habit of changing my wallpaper on all of my Apple devices to match the month of the year. This month, I decided to do something different. I added important historical events from around the world. While looking up important historical events that happened in the month of November, I came across one that left my mind. It left my mind because it's been a while since I last thought about the topic of discussion. This event is one I have personally seen a piece of with my own two eyes. The important event that I am referring to was the fall of the Berlin Wall. One may ask, what was the Berlin Wall? And what made it so important? Well, the end of the Second World War brought an end to a long and devastating conflict that saw the lives of 50 million to 85 million cut short. The war ended in Europe on the 8th of May, 1945, roughly 4 months before the end of the overall conflict. 3 of the 4 Allied countries, the United Kingdom, the United States, and the Soviet Union, all agreed to address the numerous damning acts committed by Germany, including its demilitarization, prosecution for war crimes, and reparations in what was known as the Potsdam Agreement. Included in the agreement was the Allied Control Council, the subdivision of control between the previously mentioned countries, with France also having a section of control of both Germany and Austria. The capital of Germany and the ACC was Berlin. It too would see a division of power between the Allied countries, despite it being completely in the Soviet-controlled section of the country. Though the countries fought together during the war, political tensions rose between them. Specifically, the Soviet Union and its refusal on reconstruction plans as it opposed the Allies' goal of a self-sufficient, unified Germany. Instead, the Soviet Union sought to maintain control of its area and extract reparations. With this, the other 3 countries, along with others within what was known as the Benelux Union, went forward with the reconstruction plans, known as the Marshall Plan. This plan combined the United States, United Kingdom, and French territories without the Soviet Union. The Cold War in 1947 would be the beginning of the geopolitical tensions amongst Eastern and Western countries and their allies. The United States and 11 other nations would form NATO in 1949. That same year, Germany was split between the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany, in May, and the German Democratic Republic, or East Germany, under the Socialist Unity Party of Germany, or SED, in October. Over the next few years, many German citizens will flee the eastern part of the country in favor of the West due to the East's communist dictatorship, lack of political freedom, and lower standard of living. In response, the GDR decided to close the border and establish a border zone in May 1952. Prior to the implementation of the border closing, the demarcation lines between East Germany and Western occupied zones could easily be crossed in most places. The addition of barbed wire fences made the crossing more difficult. This was not the case yet for Berlin, though it too was still divided between East and West. In response to NATO, the Soviet Union and 7 other countries would form the Warsaw Pact in 1955, which was part of the larger Eastern Bloc. The same year, tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union continued to rise. Though many Germans in the East were granted visits to allow its residents access to West Germany, this changed in 1956 due to the increasing number of residents crossing over. In December 1957, East Germany introduced a new passport law that reduced the overall number of refugees leaving Eastern Germany. There was still a loophole, as Berlin served as a means for East Germans to escape into West Germany. By 1961, 3.5 million Germans escaped to the west. This was equivalent to about 20% of the population. The loss in population included critical working class individuals such as engineers, teachers, and lawyers, in what was known as the brain drain. With claims of reparation for lost citizens from the East German leader Walter Ulbricht to West Germany, the situation between East and West was about to change, and it was not going to be good. Ulbricht pushed for the closure of borders, an idea he had for a long time. There was speculation that he and chairman of the Council of Ministers of the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, collaborated on the idea, but nothing official has been officially stated. It was determined by Ulbricht at a garden party in East Berlin on the 12th of August 1961 for the construction of the wall in Berlin. The next day, East German Security Forces Chief Erich Honecker orders police and troops to erect a barbed wire fence and began construction of the wall. The construction of the Berlin Wall on the 13th of August 1961 is known today by Germans as Barbed Wire Sunday. The initial barbed wire fence soon turned into a 12-foot concrete wall that encircled West Berlin that was 155 kilometers long. The GDR armed forces along with paramilitary soldiers were ordered to shoot anyone who attempted to cross the border. Seems insane enough, right? Well, this was only the beginning of the horror. Chained fences, additional walls, minefields, and other obstacles were installed along the length of East Germany's western border with West Germany. A final measure of security in Berlin was the death strip, an area between two walls as wide as 100 to 200 meters, which contained watchtowers, anti-vehicle trenches, guard dog patrols, floodlights, and tripwire machine guns. What started as an easy means for East and West Germans to cross into each other's area became the most difficult. Families were torn apart, and those who lived in the East and worked in the West were cut off from their jobs. This came with strong opposition from West Berlin, especially considering it was a split city in the middle of Soviet territory. US President John F. Kennedy opposed the wall, but was grateful it only divided Berlin without any action against West Berlin's access to the West. The wall did not help relations between the US and the Soviet Union. A week after the wall began construction, the US sent a 1,500 troop task force to West Berlin with tensions rising at the border. During the growing tensions between East and West, and contrary to popular belief, the East German government was able to reassert its control over the country. Economic problems caused by dual currency and the black market almost completely eliminated. The economy was also growing in East Germany. The biggest problem facing the GDR was the public relations with the wall. This did not stop Western powers portraying it as a symbol of communist tyranny. This was especially true after GDR border guards shot and killed would-be defectors. With the wall came border crossings between East and West Berlin. These allowed visits by West Berliners to West Germany, Western foreigners and Allied personnel into East Berlin, and visits by East German citizens and citizens of other socialist countries into West Berlin, though they had to have the necessary permits. At first, East Berliners and East Germans could not travel to West Berlin or West Germany at all. This rule would become less restrictive over time, though not completely abolished. Sometimes crossing into the West came out of desperation. Numerous civilians and even soldiers have either attempted or successfully defected to West Berlin. Early attempts at crossing over came from people jumping the initial barbed wire or leaping out of apartment windows along the line. Once the wall became more fortified and orders came down for buildings to not be built near the wall to prevent people from jumping over the wall, these attempts ended. The first to successfully cross the barrier was a man by the name of Konrad Schumann, an East German police officer, on August 15, 1961. The first casualty was a woman by the name of Ida Siekmann on the 22nd of August, 1961, having succumbed to her injuries after jumping out of her third-story apartment. The first to be killed by East German authorities was a man by the name of Gunther Litvin, as he attempted to swim to West Berlin. Between the remainder of the 1960s and the 1980s, the wall would be modified with extra security. Many more people lost their lives or found new and creative ways to pass into West Berlin. Anti-wall sentiments from the West began to gain traction from celebrities and politicians. President Kennedy was one such person, having given his Ich bin ein Berliner speech at the Rathaus Schönberg in West Berlin in June 1963. In his speech, he gave hope to West Berliners who were surrounded by Soviet rule and sent a message to the Soviet Union. It was not only one of Kennedy's best speeches, but also one of the best speeches during the Cold War. Regulations became more relaxed in the 1980s. Some examples are easier travel to and from West Germany and West Berlin, as well as travel by West Berliners and the East, and even GDR border guards being instructed to stop using firearms to prevent border violations. Despite the relaxation, it still wasn't enough. There would, however, be an event that began a chain reaction that led to the end of the wall. The Iron Curtain, a political and physical boundary that divided Europe since the end of the Second World War, opened up. This occurred between Austria and Hungary at the Pan-European picnic on the 19th of August, 1989, in a peaceful demonstration to open the border gate. Seeing the potential, Germans of both sides followed suit. Word spread through the GDR and networks of travelers. East Germans who were allowed into Hungary on tourist visas began seeking passage to Austria and West Germany. Hungary's policies toward its border gradually became less strict, and the cutting of border fence sections made travel much easier. The departures embarrassed East German authorities. In September of 1989, large numbers of East Germans started traveling to other Warsaw Pact countries like Hungary and Czechoslovakia in hopes of reaching the West. West German leaders and governments pushed for transit and asylum. East German leaders were against this, but were forced to give in. Later that month, thousands of East Germans fled to the West German embassy in Prague, seeking asylum. The embassy became overcrowded. Negotiations eventually allowed large numbers to travel to West Germany via trains organized through Germany, and the USSR's implied acceptance. The Prague incident underscored the depth of dissatisfaction and the inability of GDR authorities to stop immigration. In October 1989, mass protests erupted in multiple cities in the GDR, especially in Leipzig, which had tens of thousands marching in protest. Polizei did not act in violence toward the crowds. Protesters demanded free travel, reforms, and political change. By the 18th of October, Erich Honecker, a longtime East German leader, was forced out of his position under pressure in favor of Egon Krenz. The change was intended to stabilize the situation, but failed to address core demands. Krenz's reforms were not sufficient. Going into late October and early November, public unrest intensified in cities like Berlin, Dresden, and Leipzig. Immigration continued via Hungary and other routes. The regime's legitimacy of power further grew weak at a rapid rate. To make matters worse for the SED, a massive demonstration occurred in East Berlin, with estimates varying from hundreds of thousands to over 1 million, If this didn't make clear the scale of opposition, nothing would. The SED's control was collapsing at an accelerating rate. On the night of the 9th of November 1989, GDR official Gunther Schabowski, at a press conference, read out newly adopted but poorly worded travel regulations stating they were effective immediately without delay. Border guards were faced with the lack of orders and the growing crowds at checkpoints. By 2245, they finally made a decision to open the crossings, allowing East and West Berliners to flow through the checkpoints without any consequence. The massive crowd began dismantling parts of the wall, marking the end of the 28-year-long physical barrier and a symbolic collapse of the GDR border. As friends, family, and strangers came together, some began to chip away at the wall in a symbolic middle finger to the wall with various tools. These people, known as wall peckers, took pieces of the wall as souvenirs. Both the GDR government and the border troops began thinking of ways to sell the wall. Pieces of the wall were eventually sold all over the world. Systematic dismantling of the wall began in June 1990. While a large majority of pieces of the wall were torn down for other uses, many parts of the wall still remain erected that can be visited and seen to this day. With the wall's dismantling, it marked the beginning of the reunification of Germany, which became official on the 3rd of October 1990. The Treaty of the Final Settlement with respect to Germany, or the 2+4 agreement, allowed this agreement on the 15th of March 1991. In December of the same year, the Cold War would finally come to an end. Thank you for watching this video. If you haven't heard me say it before, I'll say it again here. I love doing these videos. I get to learn more about something I didn't previously know or only had surface level information on. This particular topic was one that was special to me because I was fortunate enough to be able to go to Berlin and see pieces of the Berlin Wall and the Brandenburg Gate, where many historical events took place when the wall was still up. I didn't understand it at the time, but thinking about it now, I was really at a place where people were divided for decades and even died for wanting something better for themselves. This also serves as a reminder of how political power shapes the world. Had all four countries came to an agreement, who knows what could have came about? Would there have been a Cold War? Would there have even been an East and West Germany? Would the four political powers still be partners to this day? There's too many questions of what could, should, and would have happened. All we can do now is learn from our mistakes and hope it never happens again. May it never happen again. But with that being said, thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Make good decisions. And have a wonderful rest of your day.